In this part of the tutorial, we're going to see a basic if statement in action. Now we've already seen what one looks like, but we haven't seen one run yet, so that's what we're going to take a look at. We're going to give an example of a basic test to run by creating a Boolean variable and executing code to test if that Boolean variable is true. So if a Boolean variable is true, we'll have the code do something, and if it's not, then we'll not have the code do anything. In this video, I'm going to give some examples of basic if statements in Xamarin, and we're going to use iOS this time. Next time we'll use Android. So by now you should have seen what an if statement looks like, but just to refresh, I'm going to make a little comment up here. And remember, comments, which is going to be anything followed by these two forward slashes here, and in the gray, there's another example there and there. They're going to be ignored by the compiler. So we can write whatever we want here and the compiler is just going to pretend it doesn't exist when the code runs. So if statements take the form if, and then there is some condition to test, and then in these curly braces here we'll have the code to run if condition is true. So when the compiler comes upon this if part here, then it tests this condition in the brackets and says, is this true? Well, if it is true, then we'll run whatever code is in these curly braces, and if it's not true, then it will skip over the code that's in these curly braces and execute everything else. Now, let's test some Boolean values first. So remember when I talked about Booleans in our variable series, I brought up the example of the isLoggedIn Boolean. So it's going to apply to anything with a count, be it a bank account, a Facebook account, an account on a game, just anything that has an account. The isLoggedIn condition is often stored in that kind of a Boolean variable. So let's create that now. So isLoggedIn, and we'll give this a value of false to start off with. So again, this is just creating a variable of type Boolean, and we're assigning it the value false. So this means we are currently logged out, and perhaps we are trying to access something within our account, but the account doesn't know if we're logged in or not, so it's going to test this. And perhaps it would use an if statement to test that. So let's see, is logged in true? Now this is basically asking the question, is the logged in variable equal to true? Now note the double equals. This is necessary when testing conditions. And if it is true, what are we going to do? Well, let's have perhaps the console print something. Rather, we'll have something printed on our phone screen. So we already have that label set up, the text label, so we're just going to change the label text to be something like, you are logged in. So we're storing this in a string, again because strings are very useful for messages. So we're going to go ahead and run it. I'll right click the iOS version, and we're going to use the iPhone 5. And so if we are not logged in, meaning if the variable is false, then we should have nothing happen because we have no code for if that's the case. So what we can do is, what if we change this to true? Okay, and if it's true, we should have that text again. We'll rerun it, and we'll see what happens. So before, we had nothing printed out because when the compiler came to this test and tested if the isLoggedIn variable is true, it realized that it was false. I mean, it's true now, but it was false before, so it just skipped over this text. Now we see you are logged in appearing, and that's because our isLoggedIn variable is true, and when the compiler ran the test to see if it is true, it realized it was, so it executed the code within these brackets, which in this case is just assigning the label text to be you are logged in. So this is a basic if statement with Boolean variables. We'll take a look at what it looks like in Android now. In this part of the tutorial, we introduced a basic if statement in iOS and saw it in action. So we did this by testing to see if the Boolean is logged in is true, and if it was, we had the app print out the statement that we are logged in. We had no case for if it was false, however. So by now you should be able to write an if statement that performs a basic test to see if a Boolean variable is true, and if that is the case, then we should have some code within the curly brackets run, and if it's not the case, then we won't have anything happen.